Coach Tristan, thank you for joining me today. Coach Tristan is currently the head coach at Western New Mexico University. Coach, for people who are watching this and don't know you, can you kind of introduce yourself a little bit, kind of your background, history of kind of where you've been through the past several years?
Yeah, for sure. I started out coaching in Springfield, Missouri, at several high schools, and I taught special ed and coached baseball and football, and loved it. And then we had children, and I realized that coaching baseball, you have a lot of games during the week, and I wasn't going to be home very much, and so I I started really focusing on my football coaching career, and then an opportunity came to coach in college. Dr. Jesse Gotting gave me the opportunity at SAGU, and it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. But I kind of do the same thing that I did when I was coaching JV football. It's the same stuff. And when we went to SAGU in Texas, they had never had a winning season in their school history. And when we got there, we were co-conference champs one year, and then went to 2 bowl games. And so we won a lot of ball games. And then Western New Mexico said, "Hey, we haven't won in a while. Why don't you come out here?" And so it's kind of snowballed, and not, some guys are always trying to get that next job. Really not doing that. They just promoted me, I guess, and we're just still doing football and loving the players.
Awesome, Coach. Now, SAGU was an NAIA school, and Western New Mexico is a Division II school. What is kind of the biggest differences that you've seen from NAIA to Division II football?
I would see, one of the things right off the bat that I saw was the little blue circle of NCAA is an attractive point for recruits. Some of those kids that we would lose, we get now just because it's an NCAA school. But I also just the biggest difference is probably the speed. Guys are just a little faster. Those big defensive ends. I think at NAIA school we had that same size. It's just instead of a 5'5", they run a 4'9" here. And I'm assuming as you continue to go up the ladder of levels, they just get faster and faster. And so that was the biggest thing. And also, when you're coaching and teaching, the windows of passing windows are going to be smaller. So your concepts and your routes have to be a little bit more precise and all that stuff. It just kind of trickles down. That's been the biggest difference. And then probably the attention that all the coaches pay to football. Like it just, you have more salaries, so you have more full-time coaches. So that, you can't make mistakes in preparation, and you have to make halftime adjustments because they're making halftime adjustments. It's just a little better from what I have experienced.
Okay. Now, when you switched and became the head coach at Western New Mexico, what is the biggest transition you had to make during that transition from SAGU to Western New Mexico? What was the kind of the biggest hurdle or biggest transition that for you personally that you had to make, whether it be personal life wise or coaching wise?
Mm-hmm. I haven't. That was one of the questions I actually asked in my interview because SAGU, the majority of the students are going into full-time ministry, and then so you come to a secular school where that's not the case. Personally, I didn't have to change anything. I still, have some core values, and we're committed to integrity and all of those things, which is who I am. So that's just what the program's like. But one of the things when you take over a program that I learned this year, and I had a mentor of mine kind of help me out with this, is oftentimes you think that when you take over a program, that same formula and that same recipe is going to work. When I took over at SAGU, it was climbing, and I really didn't have to change a lot. And I already knew the changes to make because I had been in that program. And so then I just, we went from 4-6 as my last year as offensive coordinator, and then we went 8-3. So it's like a real quick turnaround. And when I came here, I made the mistake that I needed to really do an overhaul. And really, Coach Clark, the guy that was before me, he did a good job of recruiting. And I probably, hindsight, I should have done a better job of keeping the train going. Sometimes you want to, I'm going to change everything, change the culture. He already had a decent thing going. And I probably, hindsight, I probably should have changed less, but just been more significant in the changes. I still think the program is going in the right direction. We've built a great foundation of what we're going to do and have had a great recruiting class this last couple of years. But, I think that goes to anybody who takes over a program, is to really measure twice, cut once on what you're going to do. Just because that person got fired or they're not there doesn't mean the program's in shambles. Sometimes it means that you just need to tweak a few things and you can get it back on the right track.
Now, you also you started as a high school coach and moved into college.
Yeah.
What advice would you give coaches who want to make that transition from high school to college? And this can be as general or as in depth as you want, but whether it be how to make that transition or kind of any other advice you'd give them.
I guess a lot of people think that you have to do the graduate assistant route and you have to do all that stuff. If you look over, I always find it interesting looking at bios of different coaches in college and how they got there. I think a popular one was Gus Malzahn. You go from high school coach to, hey, offensive coordinator, Arkansas. Just a huge jump. And then you have some guys that, it takes a long time to get into college. I always tell, I get a lot of emails of young coaches that are looking for jobs. I always tell them, just start coaching and start teaching. I think one of the biggest things that I think is probably maybe a detriment to our profession is that we get into these, maybe some analyst positions and some of these graduate assistant positions where we don't get to just teach and coach the game. And then what you can find is that, man, I really don't like it. Because I got into coaching because I love to teach. I love to see young men change. And so that's a big thing. I always try to tell them to do that, to teach wherever level. But the other thing, I remember I was at a clinic one time and it was actually Bob Stoops was speaking, and it was at a casino, and I walked in and nobody was there. I mean, everybody was gambling. And I'm like, what? This is Bob Stoops, And he's talking, and afterwards, I was just sitting talking to an older gentleman that was a coach, and he asked me, he said, well, what do you want to do? And I was coaching college at the time, and I said, well, I'd like to coach college. And he asked me this question. He says, well, who knows that? And I said, you? You're probably the only person that's ever asked me that. And he said, well, you need to tell people. And it's funny, I went back that night and I just emailed my old college coach, and I said, if you ever hear of an opening, would you let me know, or would you just let me know, and I'd love to apply for it. And that's how I got my first college job, is somebody, reached out to him and he reached out to them, and that's how it worked. So make sure you communicate it. Sometimes we get scared to tell people our dreams. Okay. And that's probably not the best thing to do.
Awesome, Coach. I kind of want to get into kind of transition more into everyday stuff. I've been curious as I've talked to coaches, kind of what staff meetings and practices kind of look like. But what does a Western New Mexico staff meeting kind of look like and entail, and how is that typically organized?
Yeah. One of the things I do tell our coaches, and obviously I tell myself, we're going to begin and end on time. So we have these meeting norms. We're always going to start on time and end on time, and I'm always going to have an agenda. And then the other thing in the back of my mind is, if I can do this in an email or in a text message, I don't need to have a meeting. And so I'm not a meeting guy. I think it's important to kind of always be on the same page. So definitely during the season, we have regular meetings. But I'm probably the only head coach in college that hasn't had a Zoom meeting with my staff. We've had a text chain, and I've sent some emails out, but I'm not a big meeting guy, especially most of our, outside of Coach Blevins, all of our staff is returning. Been fortunate to have great retention, even though we've only gone 2-20 the last 2 years. I can't get rid of anybody. No, I'm just kidding. So we kind of know each other and what to expect. And so right now we don't do that. When we get in the season, we try to meet daily. But once again, it's usually 20 to 30 minutes of a meeting. If we're going to talk recruiting, then it goes a little bit longer. But I always have an agenda out, and always the first thing that we talk about is roster. Our most important thing, and I think this should be of every coach, your most important resource are your people. And recruiting is not as important to me as retention. Because when you retain kids, you start building a program, and then those kids recruit for you. Those are your best recruiters because they know what we need to be better. So we always talk about rosters. Hey, who's struggling? This year we had some kids that lost family members. Those types of things. We're always talking about our roster, and I usually just go around the room. Especially in the spring, we do that. But I go around the room and we talk about your position group. And one of the things that I learned, and this is for anybody who teaches in a meeting setting, I had a principal one time when I was teaching middle school, and she observed me, and she said, Coach, you do a great job teaching, but just because they're quiet doesn't mean they're learning anything. And that was so true. So in our staff meeting, if everybody's quiet, it doesn't mean that anybody's listening to me, or in our team meeting, or in our position group meeting. So kind of the norm is that we're going to begin and end on time. I go through an agenda, and probably the most important stuff is our roster. And then we walk through our practice schedule because we want everything to hit on all cylinders. And we actually, before the season, we actually go around and walk through a mock practice on air, just because you don't want any surprises. Hey, I didn't know O-line was going to be there. And so you want everything to be smooth. And those are all things. It doesn't matter your budget; it just matters your organization and your attention to detail. So that's kind of what meetings look like for us. A lot of things. I get the question on how do you do recruiting meetings. I always thought it was really interesting that staffs and it teaches own, but why would the O-line have an input on what DB you're looking at? So we don't watch film. I don't waste people's time, especially with huddle. Watch the film on your own, then tell us what you think, and we do it by position group, and then the coordinator and I have the ultimate say. Because at the end of the day, it's me and him who are making the decisions. We love the running backs coaches, and we love all those position coaches, but they're not calling the plays, and it's not their system. So I think that's important. So we kind of have a chain, and we talk as staffs, offense and defensively, about our recruiting.
Awesome, Coach. Now, with you being at a Division II school, I mean, obviously your staff's not as large and budget-wise as compared to some of these other schools. How do you delegate some of the responsibilities so you're not overloaded, and that way you can still functionally run your program in a good way?
Yeah, I had one of the guys that I used to eat breakfast with every Tuesday, local gentleman, would ask me, he'd say, well, what'd you do yesterday? And I said, well, yesterday was DFO. I was director of football operations yesterday. And then today I'll watch film for practice. And so those types of smaller hats, so travel, academic stuff, a lot of that stuff I take care of so that our coaches don't have to. So what we do is we split up our staff between a retention committee, essentially, and a recruiting committee. So the guys that are focused on recruiting, they're going to take care of visits. They're going to be the guys that are out and about the majority of the time. And then the other guys that are focused on retention, they're going to be the ones that are working on academics. They're going to be in the weight room because we don't have a strength and conditioning coach. They're going to make sure they're in the weight room and doing that kind of stuff. They're going to try to organize community service activities. And so we just kind of split it up that way. This past year was very difficult because we don't have as many full-time coaches as I did at SAGU. And so this past year, we all kind of just did all of it, but we had one guy that was in charge of recruiting, the other guy as far as retention. And we're very intentional on the retention aspect. We went 0-10 our first year, and we had 84% of our guys come back. We really try to go out of our way to just love the players, and we play different games with them. We have them over to our house. We play Pictionary. You name it. We're doing wiffle ball games because we got to create that. But we have to split up our staff that way so that it's just not an afterthought.
Okay.
So we've got guys that are focused on that, and especially academically. Our linebacker coach has done a great job with study hall, and so he's on the retention side of it, so that guys are eligible.
Awesome, Coach. Kind of continuing on with that and you talked about you only brought in one new coach this offseason, but when you have had to hire people, what do you typically look for when you're hiring new coaches?
That's a good question. I'll give you the long answer. If not, the first thing is my very first thing I look at is, does he care for players? Because at the end of the day, they have to care for players, because that's who I am. And that if you're looking at a player like he's a pair of shoulder pads and a helmet, it's not going to work, because that's just fundamentally not me. I know every kid's name. I know their first and last name, first day of practice. We know our guys. And it always aggravated me when people put tape on a helmet, because I was like, dude, get to know your team. And so I'm passionate about that. I'm passionate about the players. So that's the number one thing. But then after that, will they fit what we are as a staff? Because not every kid will connect with me, because my personality is my personality. And some kids, hey, you know what, Coach Tristan's a little odd. I don't really like to hang out with him. But so we need some diversity, not only, skin color, if you will, but also, their personality, their interests. We have coaches that are big into hunting and fishing. We have coaches that are awesome at Madden. I'm not good at either. So it's just, you have to have that diversity, and because, on just so many fronts. But I'll give you an example. We lost our offensive coordinator to Mid-American Nazarene, and he got the head coaching job there, and Paul's going to do a great job. And so we were second in the conference. We finished second in the conference in passing. So one of the things for me is, man, we need to really look at chucking the ball around, because we have all of our receivers coming back. We got our quarterback coming back. And so Coach Blevins came about, and he was aligned with me. He cared about football players. He was consistent with that. And then I realized that he was really good at throwing the ball. And so it just worked out. And the other thing is, I always call people that aren't on their reference sheet. Because obviously, if they're on the reference sheet, they're going to say good things about them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really cross-check the reference. I go out and find somebody that knows them. And then also, I always try to meet, if they're married, I try to meet their spouse. And I want to take them out to dinner. I want to see how a coach handles himself in, how does he treat the waitresses? How does he treat the people that were around that really don't matter so much to him, but does he really respect people? And then obviously, birds of a feather flock together. So their wife and their kids are an important thing. And that's one of the things I always bring my kids around. Kids are phenomenal at finding out the character of people. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things, because I always tell this to our coaches, when you're recruiting a player or a coach, the best time to fire a guy is before you hire him, or before, best time to cut a kid is before he's on your campus.
Yep.
So you want to measure twice, cut once on that thing.
Awesome, Coach. And I kind of want to move on to some scouting stuff real quick before we wrap this up, Coach. Like you said, you were a former offense coordinator, and then at high school level, you were a defense coordinator. So when you evaluate, what are you looking at? What are the key things you initially start looking at to evaluate an opponent?
Yeah, I was on a canoe trip with an old football coach, and he's retired now, and one of the winningest coaches in Missouri. And he told me, I was asking him how to defend the veer option against this one team, because he had beaten them several times. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, dude, what do you do? And he goes, well, I know where they're going to run the ball. I put my best player there. And so I was like, that's it. And he goes, yeah, it's always going to be about your players and getting them to play the very best. And so one of the things we do, we probably spend our most time on matchups. And we want to play juniors and seniors, and we want to work on matchups. Just making sure, where's their best player? How is he not going to beat us? And we've had a lot of success, and then even in this past year, we had this with this quarantine. We've been self-scouting like crazy, And a lot of it has just been some inexperience that you just got to live with, where you got outmatched. But I kind of always live along the lines of I never want to be, that scheme rich and execution poor. So probably about 43% of the time we run our base coverage, and then we'll mix in some other stuff. But defensively, we want our guys to be able to play fast, and we not, obviously we want to line up to every formation. That's kind of important for us. We find their three best passes and the best runs, and we just want to be in the right spot and be able to play fast. Matter of fact, there was an article that came out. I don't know if you saw it or not, but Bill Belichick had an article, and it was kind of, I don't know if he wrote it or not, but it was with Iowa State as well, talking about their attention to defending the pass more than the run, which was just fascinating. And essentially the whole thing is about matchups. Is where's your speed, where's their speed, where's their best athletes. And so that's why this year we're so excited, because we really feel like we're apples and apples athletically. And that's one of the things I see with younger coaches, especially. And I think it happened to me as well sometimes this year. You don't win very many ball games, and you start to think, "Ooh, am I doing a good job? Do I really know what I'm talking about?" And so next thing you know, you're running cover 4, cover 3. You never even practiced it, and you start to doubt. And at the end of the day, you got to know what you hang your hat on and be confident in it, because the kids will. And so we really kind of pay attention to ourselves and try to self-scout ourselves as much as we can.
Awesome, Coach. And kind of to hit on what you just talked about a little bit is, you mentioned self-scouting there. How often in a typical season do you self-scout? And then when you do, what are you trying to focus this on? Because you know as I do. I mean, you could self-scout. Everything and overanalyze everything as it is. I mean, what are you and your coaches focusing on when you do get self-scout?
Yeah. Well, I'm along the lines of this, is that strong teams have strong tendencies. And so I don't self-scout tendencies so much, because you want a really balanced team, you'll find a really not good team. So what do they do well? And so if strong teams have strong tendencies, the thing that we look at in our self-scout is how many times do we have a broken coverage? How many times do we have a guy running free? One of the things that bothers me, I'm in the back half. Now I coach in the back half, and that's what I've done the majority of the time when I'm on the defensive side, is when a corner gets burnt and the ball's underthrown and he gets a pick. And it's just like, dude, we're rewarding bad behavior. And so we really look at that. We grade our guys, and that when I talk self-scout, I mean grading our guys on, their alignment, their key, and their assignment. We had a kid last year who got a negative on an interception. All the players thought, yeah, he did so well. No, you didn't. You're in the wrong coverage. You had the wrong alignment. And so those types of things are really important to us, because those are things you can control. We don't self-scout stuff that we can't control. If we put the kids in a bad situation, we called poor coverage in a situation, they can't control that. But as long as they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, then we can control it and we can grade it and self-scout that. And so that's, personally, it doesn't make for that long of a day. I think sometimes we watch so much film that, well, does it really matter? Are you making, is that going to happen? So don't get me wrong, we do work hard, but we don't, we want to be efficient with our work.
Awesome, Coach. And then kind of just to wrap up, do you have any closing thoughts you want to express, given current situations, your program, anything we touched on, anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about? Kind of the floor is yours, Coach.
Well, I would say, at the end of the day, what gets me into coaching is what's the win. And really the win for us is always to develop good dads, good husbands, and they're going to do something in their community that's positive. And I think there's no greater platform in America right now than football coaches. If you can reach the man, you reach the wife, you're going to reach the future children and generations. And I don't know that football coaches understand the responsibility that we have. And I think especially with this, with the rioting going on and some of these things that are going on in our world, what a great opportunity to show love like, I just sent the video out to our players, man, just reminding them that I love you. And that's important. Sometimes we don't say that to guys. My dad wasn't a guy that was always going to be like, love you, Frank, but it still feels good when somebody says, man, I'm proud of you. I love you. One of the things that I learned is, it's just one of the coaches told me, and he just said, Frank, after a loss, how many times do you go out and just congratulate a player? Or do you just go physically touch a player and let them know that you still love them? And so that's the win. And I think we have a great opportunity. And also I was trying to talk about what's going on in our world, is to just have a conversation, without pushing an agenda. Sometimes as coaches, they have to listen to what we say, and we don't just let them talk. I heard of something yesterday. I was talking to a leader, and he said, if you're talking for 9 minutes, shut up, ask a question, and listen for 9 minutes. And I was like, dude, that's good, because we always want to just talk and we don't listen. And I think a lot of that with our young guys today and our players is we're not listening to their voice. And when this happened, when some of the rioting and the protests were coming out, my wife stopped me, and I was going to make a video to our guys, and she goes, Frank, you need to realize you're a little white guy, and she was like, you need to make sure that you've listened. And sometimes we speak too quickly and we don't listen. And so I think that's important as a coach. And my final thing that I would say is one of the most powerful things that I've learned as a coach in recent time here is the ability to say sorry to a player when you've done something wrong. And I remember a couple of years back, I got onto a kid. I mean, I just let him have it. I started bringing things back from when he was 2 weeks ago. And you remember when you did this? You remember? And I got up there afterwards, right after. We were in the middle of a drill. We were doing one-on-ones. And I got up and I said, I'm sorry. And I'm telling you, I could tell that I had crushed him. Mm-hmm. I'd broken him down. And when I said sorry, it was almost like he was just like tears. I'm like, whoa, we don't realize how much impact we have and how much these young men look up to us. And so, yeah, that's kind of my heart. I probably talked too much about that, but we're passionate about it.
Awesome, Coach. Thank you.